Good morning, everyone. I'm Suchi, and welcome to AI Minute Mondays, where I take a couple of minutes to demystify AI for everyone. Today, we are going to talk about AI in pathology. From cancer diagnosis to rare disease detection, AI is reshaping how we interpret medical images, streamline workflows, and even uncover patterns which are invisible to the human eye. Joining me today to unpack this topic is Nishant Agrawal, who is an associate director of ML at PathAI. And Nishant, can you share a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, first of all, on Suchi. That's a real pleasure talking to you. Um, I come from a typical computer science background. My education, right from my undergrad and master's, have both been in computer science, but very early on, during my studies, I started to focus a little bit more on machine learning, and computer vision especially excited me quite a lot, like trying to play around with these images, especially back in my day when deep learning wasn't really big. You had to do a lot of manual toying around with features and trying to like play with pixels to like really get the computer to do anything meaningful with it. So that's where my passion kind of started. But then later on, I went to grad school at Carnegie Mellon to pursue it a little bit more. Um, and after that, I immediately just joined PathAI in Boston. It was this health tech startup that was pretty small at the time, and but it was surprisingly well known at Carnegie Mellon. And generally, I'm very passionate about working in areas that have real social impact, and it couldn't have been a better fit. So I don't come from a typical biology background, but I think like after working there for the 7+ years, I could maybe like look at a pathology image and tell you that this is a cancer cell versus maybe this isn't. Don't take my word
Wow.
for it.
Oh, that is an inspiring journey. Thanks for sharing that, Nishant. So let's get a little bit into the topic. You and your team have been working a lot around AI in pathology. So can you share a little bit around the use cases for using AI in this particular field and what kind of an impact can it have?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Pathology historically is traditionally like a very manual task, like interpreting pathology images.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're reliant a lot on subjective assessment made by very highly trained pathologists. Generally, when you go in to like have a biopsy or something taken as part of like a routine test or some kind of screening, these tissue samples are stained with different kind of antibodies, and then they're viewed under a microscope by a pathologist. Um, and it's a fairly manual task of trying to like zoom in and like pan to different areas of the tissue, try and identify patterns and like assign a diagnosis to a patient and tell them like what is really happening. When I started at Pathia, this field wasn't really digital, and it was still fairly analog. However, it's rapidly getting digitized now, and you're ending up with people scanning these tissues and generating these gigapixel images, which is like a fascinating problem from a computer vision point of view, and it's ripe for disruption using machine learning. Um, at Pathia specifically, there are two kind of verticals that we focus on. One is helping biopharmaceutical companies, aid with their drug development programs, and also maybe trying to target patient populations to specific therapies, identifying which patients might respond the best to certain kinds of therapies in this era of personalized medicine. Um, there's one very well documented use case in PDL1 that I can talk through where the value is very clearly demonstrated. So PDL1 is basically like this. I don't go into it too much, but PDL1 is this protein that's found on the surface of cancer cells and some immune cells. There's a variety of immunohistochemistry based tests that you can use to judge the level of PDL1 expressed in like a particular patient's tissue sample. And generally, without going into too much again, the higher expressions are correlated with poor prognosis in certain types of cancer. That's the gist of it. Um, a pathologist, unfortunately, is tasked with this very, very difficult job of like trying to look at this massive patient tissue sample, zoom in and out of different regions, identify what percentage of cancer cells or what percentage of immune cells are expressing this PDL1, and assign a percentage that I think XYZ percentage, like 1% or 5% or 10% of the cells are positive for it. And you can imagine it's a very subjective task, but it's really, really critical because based on what that percentage assessment is, patients are assigned life-changing immunotherapy treatments, right? If you get maybe a 5% diagnosis versus a 1% or 10%, the therapies that are assigned to you can be completely different. So it really isn't like the most comfortable feeling when you find out that this is something that pathologists have to kind of eyeball and like give and assign a percentage to, right? This thing is really should be just done by machines and maybe some human in the loop can review it. And we've published a lot of research to show that patients who are kind of at the lower level of expressions, maybe around the 1%, machine learning can help identify a lot more patients who would be eligible for therapies beyond this 1%, but who otherwise would have just been missed and been called not very positive for PD-L1 and not assigned life-changing therapies. We've demonstrated this in lung cancer, and it's generally sort of areas and problems like these that really are ripe for disruption as under like correct supervision by pathologists. Then there's this other use case of digital diagnostics where in routine testing laboratories and hospitals and academic medical centers where if you go in, you have a biopsy taken, someone has to review it. There's a lot of tasks again that pathologists do that are again very manual, and you can leverage a lot of machine learning based products and tools to, for example, maybe help them flag patients who might have higher risk of being malignant, and those can get reviewed first, and they get their diagnoses faster than 95% of the people who are generally pretty like have a normal prognosis. Or you can flag quality issues with like staining samples, etc., that a lab technician can fix before it even goes to a pathologist. You can build a lot of co-pilot-like tools to help automate some of the menial tasks that pathologists do. So there's a lot of use cases that as these images are becoming digital that are ripe for disruption, and you can really sort of like improve the efficiency and throughput of pathologists by an order of magnitude.
Oh, these sound super amazing, Nishant. I'm sure the viewers can resonate with how deep of an impact AI can have in this particular field, from bringing in better accuracy. So now let's kind of delve a little bit into the technology that goes behind the scenes to make this happen. So can you talk a little bit around what your team at PathAI is working on to basically ensure that this happens?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we are primarily a team of machine learning engineers and scientists, like focusing on our ML group specifically. And a lot of our day-to-day kind of involves building deep learning-based models to accomplish a variety of tasks specific to the product we might be building. Generally, a product is like a very well thought, like amalgamation of some of these models that can help aid pathologists, whether it's for efficiency or identifying new drug targets or computational biomarkers that previously would not have been possible. As part of these products, we always have to be like constantly be innovating and doing a lot of research in the back end. We've published a lot about our foundation models and a lot of our novel evaluation strategies and the way we ensure generalization, robustness, etc., in some of the top machine learning conferences. But a lot of what we do is use machine learning to like build these products and build and own entire sort of product life cycles. So of course, working with our product managers and customers very closely to understand what it is that is like the most painful and like annoying thing that they have to do that, we really should not be relying on humans to do if they're not good at it. And take those requirements, build something that's well thought out, evaluate it on a robust, generalized, sort of representative intended use population, put it out there in the field for people to use, gather feedback, and then like go through this again. And there's this sort of constant iteration and like working with customers to really like move the needle over the years. That's really sort of brought us a lot of success.
Thank you. That sounds amazing. But let's dive a little bit into the challenges from a
Mhm.
regulatory, compliance, or even ethical considerations.
Yeah.
How does your team ensure the accuracy of the responses? And again, the models that you were talking about, what about the data set? Is the data set representative of everyone, or do you kind of find bias in the data set? How do you kind of handle these issues? And most important, of course, is the safety concerns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you elaborate a little bit on these, and how does your team work on handling these challenges?
Yeah, of course. Evaluation is obviously like critical to what we do, and like it's what will inspire trust in what we build and deliver. And it's essential for adoption. We've published a lot about some of the novel evaluation strategies we use. We try to generally stay away from trying establishing like a ground truth. What we instead try to do is for every product we build, we try to, of course, test it very robustly in ways that compare the performance of the product to an average pathologist. Our sort of like belief is that we should try and build products that perform at least as well as an average pathologist on very representative sort of intended use populations that the product is sort of catered towards. The FDA itself has very detailed guidelines on what like these population characteristics should be, what they should be representative of, and we do our best to try and sort of stick to those norms. The other thing to keep in mind is that also we're never really letting this machine kind of run amok and do whatever it wants. Our focus is always on like the human and the AI in the loop and seeing how that can really transform the field and move it forward and reimagine the ways you do pathology diagnosis today, or find new biomarkers or like drug discovery. A lot of the ways we inspire trust is also through interpretability of our models. We produce heat maps that pathologists can look at. We flag certain areas and really solve this needle in the haystack problem, where instead of like really scanning an entire slide and trying to find areas of malignancy, for example, we might instead just show them that, hey, we want you to focus on these certain patches, and then either agree or disagree with our output. So it's not so much the machine just trying to like predict an outright diagnosis, which we do at times as well, but then also just giving reasons and interpretability and pointing pathologists to like the right areas and to reason for why we're doing what we're doing. Um, Finally, when we do build up products, there's a lot of emphasis on just doing very thorough risk assessments to analyze potential scenarios or edge cases that might creep up, which can, pose certain risks to the final outcome. But that also informs the design of our products in turn to eliminate or like pretty much reduce all of the scope of the errors to the extent that's possible. So it's a combination of like testing, interpretability, risk assessment, and then also just monitoring in the field what our products are doing and like being very proactive about improving them.
Thank you. That sounds amazing. So, like you mentioned, AI in pathology, it's not just a small technical upgrade. It's basically a paradigm shift. And when used with all of these controls and guardrails in place, including the right evals, having the human in the loop, and ensuring that everything's validated by a pathologist, and but just making it easier for them to do their job. I think you've shown us how AI has great potential in the field of pathology, and thank you for all of those insights and summarizing so effectively in terms of what your team is doing at PathAI. Loved having you on the show, and I hope our viewers are inspired by your journey to go ahead and take on more of these different roles, even being a core technologist, but trying out maybe roles like AI in pathology, and then basically pushing the needle on how we can move from a social standpoint and bring in change. So thank you,
Yeah,
Nishant. Has been great having you on our show.
absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It's always fun and motivating to talk about machine learning and sort of like technology adjacent fields in healthcare and how we can help move the needle there. So really appreciate the time.
Thank you.